100 languages. However, as far as employees go, we have 10 employees and 6 translators, so obviously they can't speak all these languages, so we're forced to freelance out some of the work. This is the CEO of IBUS166, and he's just talking about why language support is one of the key factors for success when entering into a foreign market. And today, many international companies are interested in developing their business in Russia, and professional language support of a local provider will make the localization process more simple and smoother for them. And the reason that this is important is because many people entering into Russia aren't familiar with the nuances of the culture, which is how translation services firms can help them in entering the market. And then this is just a corporate structure of Ego Translating. And as you can see, they divide up all their different units, and they delegate responsibility in order to be as efficient and economically prudent as possible. And then this is a SWOT analysis that we performed for RussTech. And our main strength is that we have a core competency in the Russian language, and this is why we chose to enter into the Russian market. And our main weakness is that we are a late mover into the market, and since there are already so many firms in the market, we find that we may have trouble finding clients. And one of our major opportunities is that as since we are basically using government contracts, we have a lot of connections with the U.S. government and some other U.S. private firms. And one of our market entry points is American oil companies in Russia. So we hope to be able to utilize these connections in order to enter the market. And lastly, one of our threats, as I said, was other local and global competition, but also issues that may arise from working with the Russian government and the U.S. government at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about product target market. We have actually a primary and a secondary target market. The primary target market for us are mid-sized American oil companies operating in Russia. We chose American oil companies because it helps minimize cultural differences. By working with American companies, we're working with a culture that we are comfortable with and that we operate in already. So it prevents some of the difficulties that you normally see with taking work abroad. We also chose mid-sized companies because while there are some fairly large players, Chevron and ConocoPhillips are 2 of the largest American companies that you would know. They normally have translation services already provided to them. They already have fairly good relationships with specific companies that they've done work with before. So entry into those companies is going to be fairly difficult. What we are choosing to target are the dozens of what they call independent companies. They're smaller American-based oil companies that work in smaller projects. A couple examples of which would be the Teton Petroleum Company out of Aspen, Polar Lights Company, and Northern Lights Company. They have specific advantages in the Russian oil industry in that they are more flexible by being smaller. They're able to go into contracts that the large players wouldn't be able to. Because of this, they have a lot of new work a lot of the times, and we hope to leverage that opportunity to enter into those companies. The secondary target market for us is then, go back one. Nice. The secondary target market would then be their Russian partners. As we said previously, it's very, very difficult for an American oil company to operate in Russia without partners. When we start working for the mid-sized American companies, while we're doing translation to their Russian partners, it would be helpful for us to make contacts with those Russian partners. That would be then the next step, the countries that we would be targeting. And that would provide us with a little more stability. Russian companies generally have better connections with the government, and in a large contract-based sector like the Russian oil industry, it's very helpful to have those connections. The conditions of the target market, instability is one of the big problems in the oil industry. Obviously, by working with oil companies, our success is intrinsically tied to the success of the oil industry. In 2006, Royal Dutch Shell was forced out of its $20 billion share in the Sakhalin 2 project by the government. In 2008, BP had to reduce their TNK BP project because of difficulties with the Russian government. Obviously, this is a danger. to the market in that some of the contracts are going to be very unstable. However, for RussTech, a company looking to get into the market, this actually provides some benefits. Because large-scale contracts are at times failing, the Russian oil industry has such a great potential that there are always new companies looking to get in on it. There are always new companies looking to develop contracts with the Russian government. Because new companies are constantly going in, that means that there's a constant source of new companies for us to try to target to enter the market. To kind of emphasize this point, the Russian oil industry, as says previously, oil reserves in Russia are doubling yearly, and even now, after having already doubled in recent years, they still only represent 18% of what's actually in the ground in Russia. So there's a huge potential. So even though there are difficulties with the Russian government, oil firms are not going to stop going to Russia. Now I want to talk about a little bit about buyer behavior. What do consumers expect from us? The main thing that they want out of translation companies are quick, precise, and effective translations at a fairly low cost. It's a fairly simple expectation. They want to make sure that everything is accurate, and they want to make sure that it's not impeding with their business in any way. Now, there's a couple choices, specific choices that oil companies have to make. They can choose to either go with a firm for translation purposes or with a freelancer. The benefit with the freelancer is that it's about a third the cost of a firm. So it's incredibly, incredibly cheap to go with a freelancer. However, when it comes to the printing of documents, they do not have the ability to print documents on a large scale. There's also less of a reliability factor with freelancers, and you don't get as quick a turnaround. By targeting mid-sized companies, we eliminate the threat that freelancers pose to us, in that they are big enough companies that a freelancer would not be able to meet their needs. The selection and bidding process is how we're going to get most of our work. The large-scale companies, when they need translation services, reach out to their contracts and ask for proposals. What they're looking for, like I said earlier, is past performance, ability to perform the contract, and also price point. And so this is where we have to say, how can we stand out? We have a great past performance. We have worked very successfully with many U.S. companies, including Department of Energy. And the real way that we'll stand out is in other relevant services.